Hey everybody, welcome back for another video. My name is Tanya, for those of you that are new here, and I am a watercolor artist. It is snowing like crazy outside and I am so in the mood for spring. So I looked up some flowers and I wanted to paint one for you. Hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so I have my Arches watercolor paper. I have a couple different sizes of my Grumbacher paintbrushes. I have my 2 cups of water, one for cool colors, one for warm colors. I have my Winsor Newton watercolors, a paper towel, and a pencil and an eraser. Okay, so to get started, we're just going to be sketching out the flower first, lightly on your page. And it looks like the flower that I'm going to be doing, I just pulled up an image here, and it's called dog rose flowers. I really like these. They're so pretty. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals, and then they have this little cluster of yellow in the middle. And the outside of the petal, at least the one that I'm looking at, I'm sure there's different color of these flowers, but the one that I'm looking at is a little bit of a darker pink on the outside, and it goes to a lighter pink, almost to a white in the middle, and then you have the little cluster of yellow inside it. So we're going to be lightly sketching that out. So you can pull up any reference of a dog rose flower that you want. So it's got the 5 petals, and you don't have to make these completely smooth, because the flower petals are a little like jaggedy here. So it doesn't have to be like a complete smooth swoop. You can just kind of come in and out and make it a little bit of a rough line. And here's going to be our middle. So just to give you like a little reference point of where your middle is going to be. So you're going to make those 5 petals, and some of them overlap each other. So just look at your image the best you can. So I have 3 there, so 2 more. All right, so there's 1. And let's go ahead and make another one right here. So I'm going to make my little center of the flower first. And then I'm going to kind of bring up my 5 petals. And some you can overlap, some you can have some space in between. Just depends on what image you're looking at. And you don't have to copy the image exactly. Like, I'm not exactly looking at my image. I'm just using it for reference, just to show me, okay, it's got 5 petals, and this is kind of where the yellow starts, in the middle of the flower. So I am not copying these flowers exactly to a T. I am just referencing them. And you know what? I always like things in odd groupings, so I'm gonna put another one here and just have it kind of overlap. And I'm just going to let it bleed right off my page. All right. And then it's got little leaves here too. And the leaves are very jaggedy. They're very spiky little leaves. So you would probably start with your teardrop shape and then just kind of make it really spiky around the edges. So I'm going to put a few of those in too. And then I'll make a little stem come out this way. And you can just keep turning your page. You don't have to keep your page in one direction. So I'm going to start with my little teardrop, and then I will come in and just kind of rough it up a little bit. And you don't have to rough up the whole thing. You could do that later with your paint if you want to. I'm just going to lighten up my edge here a little bit. And let's make another one come out here. And I'll make another stem come out this way, because they're just kind of clustered together. So it's not like they're all growing in one direction. And let's have a stem here, and then this one can bleed off the page. Okay, that's pretty. All right, so that's about all I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna start out with a little bit of my Perm Rose. I'm gonna get it wet. And then I'm gonna find a little space here on my, actually, you know what? I'm gonna clean off a little space here. So with the paper towel, I'm just gonna get it wet, and I'm gonna clean off a little area on my palette here. Sometimes I leave the paint on there because I know I'll be reusing it. But in this case, it looked a little too, it had too much paint on there. So I knew it was gonna start blending in with another color that I wouldn't want. So let's do that again. A little bit of our Perm Rose. Get it nice and wet. Okay, and we can wash off your brush and go ahead and get one of your petals wet. You don't want it saturated, but you want it wet enough. And then you're going to take your Perm Rose, and it is a little bit darker towards the outside of the petal and a little bit more white and light pink as you get inside the flower. So we're going to start and let that bleed nicely towards the middle of our flower. And you can bring it down as much as you want. That's about all I'm going to do, and I'm going to let the rest just bleed in. And then we can always come in and put another coat on that. So I don't want these two petals to bleed into each other, so I'm going to skip over that one and I'm going to go directly to this one. And if you think that you put down a little too much water, just go ahead with a nice clean brush and just pick up some of that water. All right, so we're going to do it again right on the edge of the flower. And you can let it bleed down. I want to get this just a little bit darker. Okay. Now I know that these flowers are all going to be the same color. So I'm just going to go ahead and just start working around the page, doing the same exact thing I just did. So I'm going to get each petal wet, and then I'm going to add a little bit of that Perm Rose to it. Okay, so now that we went ahead and got all of our petals with the first layer, if you think that it's a little bit too much pink coming down towards the middle and it bled a little too much, just take your clean paintbrush and start from the center and go back out and pick up some of that paint, and you'll lighten up. You'll never get really back that white of the paper, but you will lighten up your color a little bit. So I'm just gonna go in with a clean paintbrush, dab it off on my paper towel, pick up the paint and keep dabbing it off on your paper towel. And that will lift up a little bit of that pink, just so the center of your flower is a little bit lighter. Another thing you could do is just take the paper towel and just dab the center of the flower a little bit and lift it up that way too. You can always do that as well. The only thing is then you might get a little bit of a harsh line, so you just want to bring it back out a little bit. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to blow dry this, and then we're going to go in with another layer. Okay, so now that it's all nice and dry, I'm going to kind of go over with the same color and just do what I pretty much did the first time. but we're just gonna deepen up our colors a little bit. And instead of getting my whole petal wet like I did with the first layer, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna go on and add the paint on the dry petal. And then I'm just gonna blend it out a little bit. That way I have a little bit more control over where the paint is gonna go. And I just really want only the ends of my petals to be darker. I'm gonna bring in also with just the tip of my brush some little lines because there is some veining in these petals. So I'm gonna drag some of that paint, that second layer of paint that I just put down, I'm gonna drag it just a little bit towards the middle. Like this. So you see some like little veins. And while your flower is still wet with that second layer of paint, you can always go in and just deepen it up even more if you want to. And I'm just gonna really punch that color a little bit on the edges here. And let that bleed in. Okay, so now that we did that last layer, we're gonna go ahead and dry this, and we're gonna probably start with our yellow unless I think it needs another little touching up of the pink. So we'll see after we dry it. Okay, so now that it's dry, I am looking at it again and thinking that maybe I'm gonna go in and put a little bit more pink on it. I just wanna pop it a little bit more. So I'm gonna go ahead and just add another layer of the pink. And if you don't think it needs it, you could just stop right there. You don't have to put another layer on like I am. Okay, so I think that's as deep as I want to get my flowers. So I'm now going to switch to a number 2 paintbrush, and I'm going to grab a yellow. Doesn't matter what color yellow you grab. The centers of the flowers are kind of a yellowish green, so even like a limey green, doesn't really matter. So I'm going to show you this. Okay, so right here in the middle, there's kind of a little circle. It bleeds out into the petal a little bit, and then we're gonna come in with these little orangish yellow polka dots around it at the end. So let's start with our center. And you can come in, leave a little bit of a highlight on there. You don't want it to be a solid yellow little round part in the middle there. You want it to have a little bit of highlight. So leave a little bit of the white showing through from the paper. And if your petals have dried already, go ahead with just a little bit of water and bleed that yellow up your petal a little bit. Not all the way, not even halfway, just a little bit. And if you think that it's a little too bright in some areas, just take your paper towel and dab it off. or take your paintbrush and just re-wet it and take the paint off that way. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do this other flower here. I'm just going in with kind of a circular, shaky hand, leaving some highlights, some of that white paper showing through. I'm gonna take a little bit of my water and just bring it up a little bit. Just drag it out. Okay, let's do this other flower. Shaky hand, going in a circle. Fill in as much as you want, but leave a little bit of white. Wash off your brush. Get some clean water on it and just bring it up. And you want to drag it up on each of the petals, just a little bit. There. All right, so we are gonna go ahead and dry that, and then we're gonna give it another, a little bit more of a limey color. Actually, you know what? We don't even have to dry it. Let's just go ahead and add a little bit of green. I think I'm gonna add a little bit of sap green to my yellow. Give it a little bit of a limey color, and I'm just gonna dab in there with some of them already, with the yellow that's already wet. I'm just gonna go ahead and dab in a little bit of that limey green in there and just let it bleed on its own. That way you have a little bit of that green and yellow peeking through. And you can put as much green as you want to. I would leave most of it yellow because it is yellow, but you can have a little bit of that green peeking through. And if you think it's a little too much, take a clean brush, dab it on the green, and wipe it off on your paper towel, and that'll pick up some of that green. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and dry this, and then we're going to put those little yellow piston things on there, all those little circles on there. Okay, so I still have my number 2, and I'm gonna pick up a little bit more of an orangey color, maybe the scarlet red. A little bit more of an orangey red. I'm gonna mix it in with a little bit of my yellow, and I'm gonna put these little tiny dots around it, just with the tip of my brush. And they're not really in the middle of the flower, they're around the yellow that we just did. They're kind of on the outside of that center part. And just cluster them. Don't make them too big though, this is really like a delicate little part of the flower. And you can make a few coming up a little bit more, just so it seems a little bit more realistic, so it's not a complete circle. So you can drag a few of them more towards, not the middle of the petal, but maybe a quarter of the way up, just like that. And you can go ahead and do that to all of your flowers. So just with a very light hand. So what we're gonna do now is we are gonna start on our leaves. So I'm gonna go back to my bigger brush. I believe this is my size 7. And you can pick up any green you want. You could pick up an emerald green, you could pick up your sap green, whatever green you want. I'm just gonna use whatever I have here on my palette already. And these leaves had a little bit of a jaggedy edge to them. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna fill my leaf. Let's get a little more green on there. Make sure your petals are dry also. They should be by this point, because you just don't want your leaf and your petal to bleed together. And you can leave a little bit of a highlight on there if you want to. And then just kind of bring it out as before your leaf dries. Just bring it out with the tip of your brush, just to give it that jaggedy edge, that spiky little edge. And you're just going to continue around and do that to all of them. Okay, so I think that's it. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of a darker green to them now. You don't even have to dry it if you don't want to. I'm just gonna deepen up some of my stems, a little bit of my leaves. You can go ahead and dry your leaves at this point if you want to, but I'm not going to. I just want it to bleed together. So I'm leaving some of that lighter green showing through and some darker green on top of it, but it's the same green. Okay, so I am going to pick up my size 2 paintbrush and I'm going to go over it with a little bit more of a deeper green. I think this is a Viridian green. And I'm just going to go straight from my pan straight to the paper. And I'm going to come in with just a delicate little hand and deepen up some of that veining. And you can even make a little bit more veining if you want to on there. And it just deepens it up a little bit and gives it a little bit more push and pull with all your lights. So now I've got a light green, a medium green, and a dark green on there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a little bit of my Payne's Gray and I'm going to make a mixture here of my Viridian Green and my Payne's Gray and just get this deeper green. And I'm just going to come in with just some shadows. So I'm just going to deepen up around my flowers a little bit on the leaf. So you could just go in and shade a little bit if you want to between your petals. And I'm just using a little bit of that Payne's Gray green mixture. So you just want to kind of step back and see if you think you need anything else. And what I want to do is I want to add a little bit more of that limey green in the middle of my flowers. And I think it needs another stem. Maybe just going this way. And maybe one going this way. There. And if you want, you can also add some leaves to the background as well. If you think that it's a little bit too stark like this, with just the contrast of the bright greens and the bright reds, you can always go in with a little bit of a wash of a lighter green. And you could have done this actually even before you made these deeper leaves here, but you can always come in and just add a little bit of green here and there, so it looks like there's leaves in the background. And you could have done this at the beginning, before you did your other leaves. You could have done this also. But it just kind of gives it a little bit of a push and pull that there's leaves even in the background. So you could just add a little bit of green wherever you feel it needs it. And this just kind of tones down the painting a little bit, just so that it's not too much of a contrast between the white background and the bright pinks and bright greens. It just kind of tones it down a little bit for you. And these leaves don't have any detail to them because they're in the background, so you don't really see them. You just kind of know that they're there. There, that definitely toned it down a little bit. Okay, so I love the painting the way it is, but I just want to see what it would look like using my paint markers. And I'm using the Arteza brand here, and this is the teal. So I'm just going to add a little bit of extra detail on my leaves with just a little bit of teal. Oh, that's really pretty. And I'm just going to come in with just a little bit of veining here and there. So you don't have to do this part, especially if you don't have these watercolor brush pens. You don't have to do this. I just wanted to add a little extra punch, because sometimes I feel like my paintings aren't complete unless they are deep enough. And I just wanted to make these a little bit deeper. And I could have come in with just a little bit more regular paint, my Winsor Newton paints, but I wanted to try and add just a little bit of this watercolor brush and see what it did. And it's also adding a different tone of green here, a different hue of green. This one's a little bit more of a teal. I'm going to see what happens when I go over it with this pink. Not too much of a difference. But I could get maybe a little bit more veining in here. Oh yeah, I'm getting a lot more veining in here. So maybe I will go over some of these. Maybe not all of them. Maybe just a few. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little bit more of my yellow mixture, yellow-green mixture, to some of those background leaves that I had done. I just want to, not all of it, but just some of it. some of them, just in like certain little sections. So maybe not the whole leaf, but just a little bit, just to add a little bit. I know I said no, we're not going to add any detail to these, which is, we're not going to, but I just want to add a little bit of a yellow to it. Just to add a little bit of variation. So we're looking a little too flat. There. Perfect. I think it needed a little extra brightening up on there. Perfect. That turned out really pretty. So I hope you liked the video and you learned a little something. And if you did like it, please give me a thumbs up and you can comment in the comment section. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and please subscribe if you want more videos like this one. Have a great day. Bye.